Greed ought not to be one's motivation, else their life will be a circle. Fralum III of Ariel. A man wearing a checkered navy robe panted as he stumbled forward through the deep, labyrinth-like gorge. The hot, dry air scorched his throat with each breath. Not even breathing was painless anymore. As he made his way around the many dimly lit boulders that littered the ground, a tall wall poked through the blanket of darkness. A strong blue hue radiated from the lower section of the wall. Laughing with delirious delight, Lyriel continued forward. Despite finding what he wanted, the man's happiness was fleeting. Finally! With this, the king will have to recognize me. They said it couldn't be done. Ha! Gaze fixated on the luminant growth. Lyriel hadn't noticed the lack of an exit path until the heavy steps and panting breaths filled his ears from behind. Panic filled Lyriel's head as he began to despair at the dead end, sweat dampening the collar on his robe. A high-strung voice interrupted his stress-induced ruminations. Lyriel, what the hell are you doing? This is the wrong direction. Are you trying to kill us all? A group of 3 armored people trailed behind Lyriel. They were an adventuring group that had been hired for cheap at a nearby town. Nothing much happened in this area, and they were desperate for money, so they were willing to accept the job despite its low reward. The man who shouted at Lyriel was their leader, a scruffy boy named Rai, who looked like he belonged behind a guild counter instead of adventuring. Rai's eyes were sunken into his face, and the bags under them accentuated his look of fragility. The other 2 adventurers wore cheap leather garments and brandished dull weapons. One of them, a tall young woman with a muscular build, put her hand on Rai's shoulder and smiled weakly. Thanks, Norn. Rai let out a weak laugh and let his shoulders sag, before sighing and lifting his weapon. Norn gazed hatefully at Lyriel before she motioned towards the sharp corner they came from. Lael, get ready. We're gonna need you in this one. Norn gently knocked on the gritty wall and took a deep breath, calming herself as she led in Rai's place. Lyriel cursed under his breath at the people protecting him. Wishing he weren't trapped in a corner, Lyriel blamed the adventurers. Did I hire you to protect me, or stand around and talk? My research is far more important than anything you'll ever accomplish. Find me a way out! Lyriel's throat was hoarse and raw. The resulting voice that came out of his mouth sounded weak and pitiful. Wincing at Lyriel's desperate attempt to salvage his pride, the adventurers turned their backs to him and readied themselves for combat. Though confident in Rai, the adventurers' faces showed a creeping fear. Each regretted their choice to accept Lyriel's offer. Greed had overcome them, but it was too late to think about that. Dust plumes rounded the corner in bursts as a grinding thud grew closer. Within seconds, the multicolored stone amalgamation had come into sight. A tall stone golem made of countless stacked rocks shambled towards them lazily, as if unconcerned with the adventurers' aggressive stances. Damn, it caught up to us already, Norn exclaimed, echoing the thoughts of her companions. The 3 shuddered with a primal fear as the monster's several blue eyes fixed on them. The adventurers took a step back. While deliriously talking under his breath, Lyriel was scraping the fluorescent blue growth off the wall. Squishing the growth into a large vial, Lyriel capped it with a pop. Finally! Now we can go back and... Norn crashed into Lyriel and threw him to the floor. You rotten bottom feeder! I am in the midst of a monumental discovery. Perform your duty and protect me. Lyriel berated Norn with a vile tone. Despite the verbal thrashing she had received, Norn did not respond. A look of fear crept across Lyriel's face as he realized what had occurred. Norn? Rai could barely whisper her name, before the harsh grinding brought his attention back to the golem. Dashing forward with all his might, Rai twisted his torso and swung his mace into the monster that towered over him. With an ear-piercing crack, Rai's mace struck in the monster's knee-like joint. A small glimmer of hope shimmered in Rai's eyes, only to be violently extinguished as he crashed into the wall beside him. This wasn't supposed to happen. I'm sorry, Norn. Rai's voice trailed off as his head dipped to the side. Gazing with disbelief at his fallen, lifelong friends, hot tears dripped down Lyle's face. In a last-ditch attempt to fight against his inevitable end, Lyle charged forward with longsword raised high. Using his speed from the charge and his full weight, Lyle leaped and swung his sword diagonally from above his right shoulder. The sword bent as it cut through the air with the force of the full power swing, flying at the golem with unbelievable speed. The moment the sword made contact with the stone monster, a sharp tone echoed throughout the canyon walls, and the sword recoiled off the hard rock that made up the golem. Arms numb and body airborne, Lyle could do nothing but close his eyes as the stone monster crushed him against the floor with a sickening crunch. Lyriel gaped with wide eyes as he lay defenseless on the ground. Desperate to save his research and present it to the king, Lyriel scrambled over the dusty canyon floor towards his shattered vial. As Lyriel turned his back to the golem in an attempt to escape, a shadow hovered over him. There was little warning before Lyriel the researcher met his end.